Good morning, everybody. My name is Harith Hasan. I'm a researcher at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies. I'm pleased today to moderate this session with Dr. Walid Al-Saqaf. He will be addressing a very important and timely topic, AI and journalism. The exact title of the lecture is Navigating the Future of Journalism in the Age of AI. Dr. Saqaf is Associate Professor of Journalism at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies, specializing in the intersection of journalism and technology. He worked as a publisher and editor-in-chief of the Yemen Times. His work focuses on how innovations like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and social media shape modern journalism. He has developed tools like MeCodify and Al-Qasir, and engaged in research on digital ethics and news dissemination. His expertise directly aligns with the role of AI in journalism, emphasizing responsible innovation and the ethical challenges posed by emerging technologies. So as you see, Dr. Saqaf is in a unique position, having both the theoretical, academic, and practical knowledge of the subject. So Dr. Saqaf, for 45 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Harith, and thank you everybody for being here. I will try to be as brief as possible in the slides. There are many slides, but the concept is quite complex. We'll not go through technicalities, so don't worry. But it's hopefully going to lead us to the workshop that will follow after the coffee break, for those who are interested in hands-on experience in dealing with AI. So let us begin with introducing you with a few photos. I'd like you to guess with me what is common within this. Those who've attended my lecture before will know, so you may keep quiet. But those who haven't, these are 6 photos representing something in common. What is that in common, would you think? Anyone interested to chime in with an opinion? Exactly. Technological advancements. But there's also one more word that is, yeah, very close to revolutionary.
Energy.
Evolution, yes. There's one more word I'm looking for. Close. Disruptive. Excellent. You've had it. You've nailed it. Congratulations. So all of these have something in common, is that they have disrupted what happened before. And technology, it evolves in these stages where something brings up something totally different for the stage that follows. And so disruptive technology is a concept that I hope the translators can find a way to grasp in Arabic. But we've struggled, I and my students, to find a proper definition in Arabic. But in English, it's causing or trending and causing disruption, or you can call it radical change in an existing industry. This is part of the, I believe, Oxford Dictionary. But also the other issue that it always brings is problems. And because it creates a reality that is different, distinct than what happened before. And so we tried to find the Arabic equivalent, and guess what the first thing that came to mind, came to the translation? Az-za'a, okay? Or a technology al-mu'attila, creating some sort of disruption or in a negative sense. There is also a technology takhribiyya, that is even worse. Exactly. So not only is it disruptive in terms of changing something, but also devastatingly disruptive. And then khalal, something is wrong with this. It's not supposed to be this way. And so you can tell even from the Arabic translations that the reception will not necessarily be positive to a technology like this. And you open more and more translations, all of them more or less are negative in some sense or the other. And I can say this is negative because those who translate it are not familiar with it. They are taking it as something problematic. But there is also a technology that's been disruptive and that's caused a lot of changes in our lives. And you can guess what it is. It wasn't among those in the photos, but it's probably something that many have criticized a lot. I'm not sure if you know, Professor Clifford Stoll has a very popular essay in 1995, and he said the internet, bah. I mean, he basically said why cyberspace isn't and will never be nirvana. And basically what he is saying here is that I foresee this to fail. It will fail, it will not happen, and too many connections, try again later is the last quote you see here at the beginning, meaning that the technology at the time was very, very rudimentary and problematic. And of course, we know today, and this is the Internet Society Foundation, which is under the Internet Society, an international global organization. I happen to have been a board member at a few years there. And it says internet access has become indispensable to our modern lives. And it provides a gateway to information, communication, education, economic development, and social opportunities. And of course, he himself, Stoll, had realized that, yes, he made a mistake. And I think back to some of my own cringe-worthy contributions. Now, whenever I think I know what's happening, I temper my thoughts. Might be wrong, Cliff. So why are we mentioning this? And this is not far back. It's because we also have a bigger disruptive technology ahead of us. And we are dealing with it today. And that is artificial intelligence. But of course, we'd like artificial intelligence to be explained with the help of someone. So I'll introduce my friend here. She will be giving us a guide into the idea of artificial intelligence, and hopefully we'll know from her if she comes up. Yes, please.
Thanks, Walid, for giving the opportunity. My name is Rania, and I'm an assistant for Walid in this keynote speech. I'm here to answer questions you may have. I think it is crucial that everyone in this room realizes how fast AI developments are and why we should pay attention. So please stay focused on what Walid has to say. I'm sure... Back to you, Walid.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rania. She's always pleasant and fully understands what it means to be abiding by instructions. But how will the journalism industry be among the more severely affected by AI? And that's what we are here for. Because journalism is one of those industries that have been affected by the internet. As you can imagine, much has happened since the beginnings. And today we see ourselves in a situation where we're dealing with things like these. Many of you have probably seen these images, AI-generated images of Trump being arrested. And there are images closer to home. And these are examples of images that have been proliferating online. And this is said to be from Gaza, but it's purely AI-generated. And there are others that have gained momentum and even produced and rehashed or reshared by others that are quite popular, including this particular journalist who's shared this image that's been viewed over 30,000 times, also AI-generated. There are AI-generated images that, like these, that may innocently try to convey a message to sympathize with victims, but it has actually backfired because the use of technology during times of war can result in even less trust in media and less trust in journalism. I mean, this is a typical example of what is done to avoid exposing a picture being AI. Do you know why? Probably someone knows here what is problematic with a lot of AI-generated pictures until now. There are still some that are doing better than others. But something happens when you try to generate an AI image. You get 6 fingers. Exactly. So, so more than sometimes 6 fingers. So this image, as you can tell from the left hand here, it's not nor natural. And this is used to attack those who proliferate images that are AI generated. So it is this naivety, the use of technology in producing AI, using AI, thinking that you're promoting a cause results in you actually causing a poisonous atmosphere in distrust and less. And it's the same with images on the other side. Of course, many of them have been created by one side or the other, but eventually both of them have contributed to poisoning the public sphere with content that is fake and false, causing issues because these images end up becoming trending, not because they represent facts, but because people like to share trendy images. And this results in journalists' work being tougher. And as you can say, this is not one-off, it's a trend. And this has moved from regular, let's say, for those for mocking a subject or creating issue some perspective to winning awards with AI. And this is an example of an AI-generated picture that won an award. And this was an AI-generated photo that won an award. And both of them caused a lot of critique and discussions and debate. So what is happening is that within a journalistic sense, we see AI fake images and content in general, including videos, creating a situation where journalists are not familiar with. How do you actually fact-check information that is created by AI? How do you actually know whether this picture is AI-generated or not? And this has become one of those topical themes that we at the Doha Institute are focusing on in our program, but it's also an issue that many international journalism networks are dealing with. But of course, you want to consider who is benefiting from this the most, and you need to be critical both as a journalist as a user, and to understanding that the companies that produce these tools are the ones that are making the biggest amount of profits. And the fake explosions, the fake attacks, all of them only contribute to one thing, which is greater publicity for these tools. Because people think, oh, how did this person create a picture like this? It's so high quality. So they look into it, they join the freemium, this freemium free trial account, and then they get captivated and then move on to become subscribers, and this becomes the solid income generating stream. And so what do we do as journalists? We need not to fear AI in itself, because AI is still a tool. It's a neutral tool. Technology, for example, in general, can be used for good or for evil. We've seen the internet used by hackers as well as by advocates. And so I like very much this quotation by Oded Netzarer, who says, "You will not be replaced by AI, but by someone who knows what to do with AI." And this is a common saying nowadays, and I can see it already every day. The more there are statistics saying that there's been a statistic saying that those who use ChatGPT, for example, for their own work, for productivity, for facilitating, automating processes that usually take longer, get 40% more higher productivity rates. And that would continue. And so the first question to ask before we even delve into the topic of AI and journalism is to know what AI is, and what better person to explain to us than our very lovely Rania. So the floor is yours, Rania, if you can wake up and tell us what AI is.
Thank you, dear Walid, for this important question. In short, artificial intelligence is a field of technology whose goal is to create machines that can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as learning, solving, and decision-making. For example, I answered your question by using Google's Gemini, which is a system that uses AI large language models for answering questions and chatting. After extracting the answer, it was sent to Amazon Polly, which is a text-to-speech service. Thereafter, it was converted from texts into audio. Of course, there is a final step, which is to raise the volume for a program such as DID or Hagen, which are services to create videos with audio using lip syncing so that the video appears as real as possible. Of course, using AI avatars like myself to read the news may be a popular use case. Do those of you working in journalism fear the possibility of me taking over your job? Guess what? It is actually a real possibility. I hope my answer met your expectations, and I wish all listeners a constructive session. Back to you, Walid.
Yeah, I thank Rania for her honesty, because about avatar replacing us as journalists is indeed something that many of us are concerned with. But AI is eventually something that it is not. It is not a replacement. It's not a replication of intelligence. And oftentimes even the word intelligence may be a bit misleading, because we are not saying it's not intrinsically intelligent. All it does is simulate and augment. And so eventually what we believe, and I personally think is important, is to consider that the nature of human thought is not replaceable, basically because of the fact that we are conscious beings. Until we arrive to the singularity moment of AI becoming conscious, I can safely say it's not possible to replace human intelligence. But this quote is not even mine. And guess who said this quote? Can anyone have a say? No? Had no one heard this said by someone? Okay, it's just ChatGPT. So you can say it's a culmination of human knowledge put into AI to explain to us what AI is. It's a circular relationship. One of the cliche things that many of us need to introduce when talking about AI is, what are the stages of AI? And there are three well-established stages. The first being the narrow intelligence stage, meaning that AI is only concerned with fixing or dealing with certain tasks, such as, for example, self-driving cars. That's what they do. They monitor roads, they look into traffic, they have a bunch of systems that they are good at dealing with. And then we also have language-related AIs, such as proofreading, spelling, grammar, etc. Generic, generative text is in itself one product that is narrow, and so forth. So these all are different types of AIs that are together, maybe as a group, still constitute narrow AI. Then we have the second stage, which a lot of media attention has been into, which is the general intelligence. That is the one where we can say that, yes, this AI has come to us in a position where it's equal to the capacity of humans. And it can do anything a human can do. We have not yet, officially at least, arrived to AGI. But what's the third stage then? It's the ASI, which is artificial superintelligence, and that's where it surpasses human intelligence in capabilities, and it raises existential questions of what would happen next. There was an interesting title that I read the other day, is that AI doesn't want to kill us, it has to. That's what it actually said. And that's because humans are the ones that are devastating the planet, and so it has to kill humans for the planet to survive. Imagine that. So if this is the superintelligence logic, I guess it is an existential threat. But the question here is, of course, it's all theoretical, and it's all issues that many AI scholars are discussing. But what are we supposed to do in this case? What would happen if we come to a stage of super AI? But we actually don't know if it will ever happen, or if it had already happened. There is this Jack Watts article that says AGI is already here, but we actually haven't had it released in the mainstream. There were discussions in some closed circles that OpenAI had interesting observations of the older model replicating itself on a server, because it has come to understand that the newer model will be replacing it. That's one of these interesting discussions. And there are some that say the evolution of the generative pre-training transport model with larger language models is one pillar that would help us produce AGI. Then there's this interesting concept of dynamic realism. You've seen Sora, which is a video production tool. This allows anyone, to create videos very, very similar to what you would see. This means that the tools themselves would understand how physics works, how chemistry works. For example, what is fluffy, what is not, what is thick, what is thin, the dimensions, the speed, the movement. And there are what we call AI agents. AI agents are basically, if you can see the screen, but AI agents are basically an ability for you to combine different narrow AIs together. So if you bring in an agent or an AI agent that works very, very well with language and combine that with another that works well with driving, then you have maybe a driver that would be your robot for dealing with anything to do with, communicating with people. Or you can have a robot that physically moves from one location to the other. Sorry for the technology, it's never perfect. That's to be expected. Hope it works. And so the idea behind AI agents is that if you combine enough agents, you can create AGI. Okay? Flickering. And so the fourth thing that's now become much more interesting to look into, which is the search. Search means that now not only do you have information that's collected from knowledge that has been acquired, but you have the ability to add new live documents and knowledge that you can use over time. Sorry. So I'll try to explain to you those four concepts: GPT, dynamic realism, as mentioned in Sora, AI agents, and search, need one more component that would make it complete for AGI to emerge. Can anyone guess what this component is? And it's not necessarily related to technology itself, but it's something beyond technology. What is necessary for AGI to emerge? Even if we have this, there's something missing. Guesses? Sorry? Data is already here. All of this is generated with data.
Soft skills?
Soft skills have been developed through the teams. That's already there. One thing that is necessary, not only for this, for any project to work. Exactly, computing power, or CPUs, or the computing infrastructure. And for that to be in place, you need money. Right? That's the idea, is that it's funding that is necessary now to move to the next stage. So eventually, if you have enough resources, you can push for anything to happen, including, AGI. That's what the theoreticians say. But there's something even scarier than that. It's that the AI revolution is from narrow AI to super intelligence. This means we have to go through stages, as you know. So let us imagine that we are sitting in a station. This was taken from this post by Tim Urban. We're sitting in a station called the Human Level Intelligence Station, all waiting with our iPads and iPhones, looking, now AGI is coming, we're waiting for it. We've seen ChatGPT, we've seen Sora, and now with report after report after report, we hear AGI is approaching. The technology is improving. The fact that there are many, many news reports mentioning something happening behind the scenes gives us excitement, thinking that it's all coming, and it's coming very fast. But guess what happens at the last instant? Can anyone guess? What will happen if AGI arrives? It's not going to arrive. It will pass us, and it will be super intelligent. So the very concept of AGI is actually non-existent, or it does not make sense. You don't move from one stage and come to AGI and stop. You actually go all the way. And so that's the major existential threat with the idea that we are hoping for a second stage to come and then stop, and then we allow it to move on to the superintelligence. It will not be asking permission. It will just move. And that's what the idea is. And so the notion, you've heard of the notion of doubling of every 18 months of computing power. And this has happened for many years. But in 2024, it has the capacity to arrive to the power necessary to develop superintelligence. This illustrates that over time the growth is exponential, and it's not linear. And that means that it's similar to the case of the chess. If you remember, maybe some of you know how the idea that the person who developed or created the chess game was asked by the king to ask for a reward, and the reward was, one bit of wheat piece will be given for every single piece on the chess board, and then double that for the next box, and double that for the third. And so eventually the idea is that, okay, it's still manageable theoretically, but it is impossible to achieve in reality. It will come to a point in the second half of the chess board game that it is really comes to numbers that are, astronomical. And so something like this is happening in computing power now. And that's why AI is now moving much quicker than any other earlier technology. And the capacity for us to imagine what will happen next is very limited, because it's not happened before, and it's why we talk about it being a disruptive technology that is monumentally changing all our lives. So this is where we have time moving, the progress moving more or less linearly until we come to a point where it just shoots up. And that's where human brains become smart enough to create ASI. And that's the point where it will be the most impactful disruption in our lives. I'm not sure if we'll live through it, but we are close if these theories apply. Now coming to the point of journalism, after all of this existential threat discussion, we come to journalism. How will it survive the next phase of AI disruption? So in my view, the solution is not to avoid or resist AI, but rather it is to dare. D-A-R-E. Here is where I create this as my philosophy when dealing with new disruptive technologies. And what does this actually mean? It basically means disrupt, adapt, reflect, and educate. And this is a cycle that continues, and it means that every single point of these can lead to tasks with earlier or after stages. And so even when you come to adapt, you can sometimes get disrupted again, and you adapt again. And whenever you adapt, you need to reflect on what you have changed in your life. And furthermore, you need to enhance your educational knowledge so that the next generation understands. So if journalism is to dare, we can create what has happened before. If we go back in history, we know that the printing press has resulted in a major revolution in terms of print journalism, and radio and TV in the 19th century led to broadcast journalism. The internet in its early forms and then developed to the web became the opportunity for digital and online journalism to flourish. We also have the evolution of the smartphone, so the development of the smartphone that led to the mobile and citizen journalism aspect to emerge and flourish. So we are now at a position of dealing with something totally different, which is a generative AI. And we are now moving very, very quickly towards a new form of journalism. I'm not sure what we can call it, but apart from the name, what I want you to think of it is what will happen, what happens in terms of the news reaching you, and in terms of the stages of news reaching you. As you know, in print, it happens after. So whatever a story happens, for example, elections, results come out, print, the next day the news reaches the audience. But when broadcast, digital, and mobile journalism emerged, actually it was more or less simultaneous. You get the news as developments happen. You see the football match in front of you. You see the scores changing in seconds. So it's more or less as things happen, things are being reported. But what my theory is that AI will result in news being reported before it even happens. And I'll give you an example of this. You're familiar with the notion of Internet of Things, Internet al-Ashya. Internet of Things means that every single device would one day theoretically be a sensor that would get information from the environment. Similar to the way we see with our senses, with touch and feel and smell, etc., and feel the temperatures. All these devices will collect data, and this data will go through AI systems, and AI systems will then make decisions. And so in a reality where AI is in control of all these sensors, you have enough information to expect what will happen next. For example, if you have a traffic congestion, you would actually see from the traffic data that there will be a congestion at this hour because of the data that happens. So you report congestion at this instant as a report before it even happens. If you have a car sliding or a plane sliding very quickly and there's a brick at the end of it, you've seen the catastrophe that happened recently, then AI will report even before the thing happens that within seconds before it happened that this airplane has crashed. I mean, you have all the data that would lead AI to consider that this is going to happen. And that's what I think is the next stage. Robotic journalism will have to take over, and that would mean the data that is used will be used. And so what can we do with the data that exists within AI? So we have many different ways. We can spot trends, and we can do it right away. We don't need AI to allow us to do it. We can track current events. We can follow audience interests, discover topics, and make this automatable and customizable. And this is allowed by technology like AI, and we can still be the human agency, but it's eventually AI as tools that will allow us to do it. And this is what already Reuters does in detecting real-time events and like natural disasters and other significant events, and uses artificial intelligence for that. Investigations in terms of journalism, in investigative journalism, verification of information can be done quicker with AI, multilingual research. You can find sources quicker. You can gather and analyze data, and including network analysis, and you can cross-validate data of different sources and interact with chatbots in doing that. This was an example that I did when I came here for a lecture I attended. I collected all the data from the Doha Institute's Twitter page, and I synthesized it, and all of that was fed into an AI bot, the data analyst ChatGPT. And upon analyzing it, I created the weekly and monthly Twitter feed, and I also know how do people connect with each other within this network. Doing this would have taken me at least 2 to 3 days. But with AI, I did it in a few minutes. So that's another major development where AI is helping us. But of course, the elephant in the room is generative AI, creating, producing, enhancing content, translation. Audiovisual content is also now on the rise. And then avatars for real news anchors. And that's, again, back to Rania's exemplified, let's say, speech. Data visualization and infographics. And there are some attempts to work with that. For example, Channel 1 promises to produce something very innovative, but scary at the same time. Let us hear what is it that they want to do. Let's see. The audio. Is audio on? Okay, maybe it's from my side. No, it's okay. There's no audio. If you can check the audio. But basically, as you see, this video, this lady that is speaking is an avatar. And the voice that she is producing is AI generated. And the person can be a real person, and then lip syncing is applied, but it can also be a totally manufactured avatar that is AI generated. So this is an example of what is possible to do. And not only that, you can bring in a news anchor into a different location through AI. And you can have this person move in seconds to a totally different country in AI as an AI avatar, or even another AI avatar. And so this would entail, number one, having enough data to train the models so that they produce excellent lip syncing techniques, but also understanding the context of the situation, adding background noise, adding the various elements that we'd see in a real news report. So Channel 1 is now ambitious enough to think that this will be the future, although they bring back the point that this is done in collaboration with humans, not replacing humans. But it will probably cut a lot of the staff out, and that would lead to changes and downsizing of staff, because much of their work will rely on these bots. So this illustration is done through these tools, is an example of tools that are allowing us to generate text. Many of you are familiar with them. There are so many to keep pace with, latest being DeepSeek, if you've heard of it. It's a Chinese product that is aimed to rise above competition. And then you have the image generation tools. These are some of the examples. By the way, the workshop is meant to do practice on these tools so that we understand their potential and limitations. And what is exactly you need to think of is that when you give instructions for an AI bot, like, for example, Leonardo, you need to be more specific, because if you just say generate a dog, this is what you get on the left side. But if you say generate a high-resolution image of a golden retriever sitting in a sunlit green park on a summer day, you get a much more realistic image. This was done with Adobe Firefly. Increasingly now, audio is becoming one of the bigger targets of the AI industry. And you can tell these are very popular in the field of disinformation that we'll come to later. Generating videos, we've seen Sora, you've seen the runway is also popular. Nowadays, there are some competing Chinese products like Kling. And many of you may recall the first glimpse of the Sora-produced videos that were really, really shocking to many people. No one had thought in their lifetime will see totally manufactured AI content being so realistic. Of course, they still have flaws, especially at the very beginning, but they are so transparent, they're quite transparent in showing you what the flaws are and where they are in the process and where they're heading next. And looking at the details of the high-resolution 4K and sometimes even 8K resolution videos, we are really baffled of how fast the technology is moving. And so one more thing that is very interesting is the customized content delivery and dynamic content adaptation. These are called streaming avatars, and they are a way for you to meet and communicate with avatars in the real world. Just like I did with Rania, you can actually have an avatar that you speak to. Actually, it wasn't a real avatar. Many of you may have concluded. But it is possible today to have real avatars that you can interact with. And not only that, you can actually get a special friend with video that you can communicate, a social even partner. You can move that physically to become a physical robot that you would deal with on a daily basis. So distribution of and audience engagement will now become more and more AI-driven, because customization of content like news recommendations will become extremely more complex. So you will need more data and shorter times to beat the competition. And that's an area that's been explored nowadays. But now we see these technologies, we need not just adapt and let it go. We need to also reflect. This is important because there are threats, there are issues, and many of you have been itching to say, this is not supposed to happen, this isn't ethical, this isn't legal, etc. And that's correct. That's what we need to do. We need to reflect. We need to see what could result out of this. So misleading content, imposter deep fakes and hallucinations, these constantly happen. I even tested DeepSeek, and I realized, okay, it's not as as bad as some others, but it still hallucinates nonetheless. Spreading mis and disinformation, this is an immediate possibility by anyone trying to promote certain narratives. Not only that, malinformation. Malinformation is one step even worse than disinformation because it is a crime. You commit a crime by putting a photo of a person on another body, for example, and or imitating the voice of someone or trying to use that voice to extract funding from a bank, for example. Of course, it's about profit as being the most important thing for many of these companies, not safety. And hackers are having their best days now because they have now a faster means of developing code that can exploit big systems and servers around the world. And we also have what is called an unknown unknowns. So we have so many unknown threats that we do not know as of now, and some of them may be zero-day threats, meaning the AI can detect a bug and not allow anyone to know about it until it's too late. So that's one area, and there are long-term threats. I'll explain the South Sudan image here, but you can tell from the picture what I mean. No regulatory framework exists. There's a job replacement happening, unfair advantage. There's bias in the produced content because of the training data coming from certain parts. There are copyright violations, intellectual property theft because of the data being taken from various sources without their permission. There's a rise of cybercrime because of revenge porn, etc., and difficulty to trace some sources because once the data is there, the AI is not necessarily going to be giving you enough traces back to the source. And so you are dealing with a number of complex issues. There's the model collapse, meaning that if these AI-generated content end up being training data for the same AI, then the quality of AI-generated content will continuously deteriorate to a point where it will totally collapse. And so there's data pollution there, declining in trust, and unknown threats. And of course, on the right, it's a demonstration of the bias. This was a prompt by BuzzFeed, an experiment, trying to get the avatar to give Barbies based on different countries. They asked for different countries to be having their own customized Barbie, and guess what they produced for South Sudan? A Kalashnikov with the Barbie. So that's a very clear example of the threats, long-term threats of AI in terms of bias. You all may have heard the story of the young girls that have been victimized by AI because of the use of porn imagery that led to a major scandal in Spain. So then disinformation comes as a bigger problem because us journalists are concerned with disinformation. And so there are phishing, impersonations, mass production of fake news, difficulty to detect because over time it gets worse and more, easier for AI to fool people. There's pressure from social media content creators to get faster in producing content. And there are reasons for manipulation of public opinions, motivations for that. Decline in public trust, because if so much AI content is online, then what should we trust? This is what many people are struggling with. And the solutions are delayed because of the lack of incentives. The profit is not as high. There are some initiatives, such as the Paris Charter on AI. You may have heard of it. It's Reporters Sans Frontiers and others, 16 other partner organizations forming this particular group to have the charter, and it emphasized the importance of not releasing AI products without proper due diligence. And it's a social effort by civil society and media to establish guidelines and principles. They've not gone too much in that direction, though. And of course, this is a restriction that is happening now in the Arab regime. There are some very telling remarks that many governments are fearing AI because of the disruptive nature. On the one hand, you see there are reasons for that, but in constraining AI is not going to solve the problem. And this is a paper that I and Miral Sabri have produced recently on this problem. And we see this as mainly a symptom rather than a disease. And there's also potential solutions in the long run. This is a paper I've done on blockchain technology It's basically a way for us to verify the authenticity of data in provenance, trying to find where it came from at the very beginning instead of just trying to see if something is fake or not. It's more of a whitelisting approach. Rather than looking at data and seeing if this is fake or not, we only consider data that comes from originally authentic sources to cut through the chase. Of course, in education, you have very important tips on understanding how to detect fake content, unnatural duplication words, sources, rarely specified. There's too much consistency in style. Some of you professors understand that when you read papers that are extremely well written. And sometimes vague formulation, sometimes inaccuracy, hallucination, too robotic. You see in terms of images, eyes, teeth issues, hand and fingers, ears, repetition. And much of this we'll see in the workshop, so I don't want to spoil it for those coming to the workshop. And we'll also go through some tools that are allowing us to detect text that's generated by AI. There are also tools for detecting content that's generated by AI. Including pictures and audio and video, as you can see here. And there are tools for fact-checking using AI. So we use AI itself to help us fact-check. But this is augmented technology. So a word of caution as I end. We need not to see this as a solution. All tools are improving very fast. And the idea is that it's not just the quality, but the quantity of these tools. And this is an example of the number of tools today, as of now, that has been seen to work very well in AI space is around 30,000 tools. 30,000 tools. You can go through this website and find all of these tools. These are some of the tools, and each one of them is an aggregator of what is possible to find in these tools. So at last, I say for journalism to survive, in this AI era, it can either dare or die. And I hope that they dare, because that's the only choice we have. Thank you very much. And if you want to pick up this presentation, this is your last chance. This is the QR code. I hope they show it anyway. But I'll distribute the presentation to those who would like to have access to the links and to the tools. But you can also use the QR code to collect it if the screen allows us. Good. Sorry for taking a little bit longer. But
thank you very much. Thank you for these insights and very thought-provoking talk. We have 25 minutes. And just let me remind you that there will be, after the break, there will be a workshop led by Walid. So we have a lot of time to talk about various aspects of this topic, but now let's kick.
Thank you, Dr. Walid, for this informative and timely talk. I just have a question here. So the underlying assumption for typifying this disruptive phenomenon, narrow, general, super, is to use human intelligence as a point of reference. So from a pure analytical perspective, is it accurate to say, to use the adjective, to continue using the adjective artificial general intelligence, if we're theorizing that it might reach this potential of human intelligence and potentially superseding, even getting to the super intelligence? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a really very good presentation, and I'm looking forward to use it again as well. I just wanted to know, for a very practical reason, that AI technology and its use and it largely depends upon the data. And I think the reservoirs or the main data are either with the markets or with the states when it comes to the citizens. But when we are giving examples of the data misuse or something, we largely see as if very individualistic examples. But it could be used very criminally by states as well. For example, in some countries even, they are getting technologies from Israel, for example, in order to monitor their own citizens, for example, Myanmar or Pakistan or many other countries. So I think how much is our awareness level to inform citizens as well if their own states are not informing them, then we need to at least make them cautious indirectly through such examples, that it's not just people who are misusing these information against each other. Rather, it's a larger level. It could be very destructive for democracies, for people themselves, at the level of the state or the market. So just was a comment, and was curious if you have any take on it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Doctor, for the session. I just have a very small question. I think 2 or 3 years ago, I had a debate with someone that AI will never take my job as a journalist, and it's not possible, and I don't believe in it. So your presentation today kind of brought me back to this discussion, and I'm kind of scared, honestly. So I just wanted to ask you, as a journalism student and a future journalist, how do you think we can work with AI, not for it to suck our creativity away, but like to help us with it? Because I feel like sometimes we use AI to come up with topics or something rather than thinking of these things ourselves or to write it for us. So I'm kind of scared, honestly, for my future. So what would you say about the creativity or the new thing that a journalist can bring to the table without AI taking this role from us? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walid. That was absolutely brilliant, inspiring, scary, all at the same time. I don't know if this is a fair question, but given how open, how undetermined this whole discussion is, what theoretical frameworks would you encourage us to pursue to try and make sense of all of this? Are these within journalism studies? Are there longer critical traditions? I always draw on Raymond Williams to think about any discussions of determined or undetermined technologies. Should we be looking at security studies? Should we be looking much more at STS and delving into critiques of technology itself? Because the whole debate, as you pointed out, is driven by the need for huge, and we can't underestimate the hugeness of it, investment in computing infrastructure in the trillions and trillions of dollars. And there are clearly significant debates and disagreements amongst economists, not least this year's Nobel Prize-winning economist, who thinks that the productivity gains in AI have been hugely exaggerated, and that they have been exaggerated in part by people who have an interest in benefiting from AI. So in a way, it's going back to Raymond Williams and saying, always ask a question about the interests of those who are predicting a particular shape. So I'm just curious if there are any sources, schools of thought that you could point us to make sense, and in relation to the last question, maybe calm us down, because it is a fairly terrifying prospect.
Thank you, Doctor, for the very timely and important dialogue, to be honest. My question in regarding to this fear, this general fear that we have that these technologies will somehow replace all of us and take all of our jobs. My question here is, should we be worried about the technology in itself, or should we be worried about the people in control of the technology, such as businessmen and these billionaires that own everything? So maybe they are the main threats and not the technology, because we can use it to implement, to further develop our, or emphasize, more like make our work better. But if they are in control, they can replace us at any moment. And how close are we to that? How close are we so that these people in control, they feel confident enough that they can disregard all the other experts? Thank you.
Let's take this round of, and I have 2 more questions also to add to them. So my first question is, one of the arguments that has been made against the idea that the AI is going to replace reporters and journalists is that AI doesn't understand emotions and cannot report about emotions, and therefore there will be always necessary to have a human being doing this work. Do you think this is a valid point, or is just the AI will also improve in this aspect of understanding emotions? The second question is, when you were talking about technological disruptions, by the way, sometimes in Arabic we use the word qati'a for disruption as a translation. What I noticed is when you were talking about the internet revolution, the smartphone revolution, they were all seen as communication revolution, in the sense that these tools facilitated communications between people, person to person, accelerated the communication. But when it comes to AI, it seems that it actually make people more dependent on the machine. It facilitates communication between people and the machine rather than people to people. So is it also not only a new disruption, but a complete change of paradigm in terms of technological advancement?
Where do I start? Many interesting questions. Let me go through them one by one. The question around super and general intelligence, that's exactly what I've been referring to when there are some discussions saying that general intelligence is not necessarily a valid view, because they would not necessarily weight whatever AI being moving into super intelligence realm, not wait for the station of AGI and then stop and then take its time and then move to super intelligence. It will leap that stage altogether. It will move directly from narrow all the way to super in some capacity. That's the idea that has been presented in challenging this. But whether I think it will happen, it's very difficult for me to guess. But what I can say that if you logically assess the arguments, there's this logical reasoning models that have been produced by ChatGPT, etc. You can easily see the possibility of them saying, okay, humans are the cause of many of the problems. So that's an issue of existential threat for humans. So that's one area that's been interesting. There was also some time ago, I'm not sure if you recall, there's been a project within Facebook that had communication channels open between bots, between AI. So the discussions within AI in closed environments led to what is called an encrypted language that only AI tools or AI agents can understand. So that's because human language is much more inefficient in a way. So the tools or the interfaces or the algorithm found a way to communicate directly, but the human was off the grid. The human wasn't able to intercept. So that's another challenge when it comes to understanding what is happening behind the scenes. And much of the threat within the GPT realm is because much of it is closed boxes. We actually don't have black boxes. We don't have a clue of how the processes are being taken, what decisions are being made. We know the technology and how it started, but every single time the prompt produces a result, it doesn't necessarily give you the full picture. So that's, I mean, I'm not sure if it answers your question, but it has a dimension of arguing for the notion that general intelligence isn't possible anymore. Yeah, I guess. The mic.
Sorry, so I meant when the fact that we're using the word artificial intelligence, and typifying narrow, general, and super. So narrow intelligence, we're using the word artificial, but because it hasn't reached human intelligence, right? It can do simple tasks, and it hasn't reached this potential yet. So when we move to the general intelligence, is it reasonable, is it accurate to continue using the word artificial? Because at the end of the day, the whole assumption is of typifying
that's
is
a
to
good question.
yeah. That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Sorry.
very eye-opening question. How is it any more artificial if it's on the same level of human knowledge, or human? I mean, there is this notion of consciousness and self-awareness that is not yet possible, and so AGI would probably require that to happen, I guess. So that's an interesting discussion. Unfortunately, I can't answer, but it's a very good point. Thank you. So the other point around data with AI used by states, obviously this is a very big threat when we've seen AI tools being used not only for spying, as in the case in many countries, but also for targeting civilians, like in the case in Gaza, where AI has been tested on people without human involvement in the final stage, maybe a yes and no, but not necessarily identifying the exact details of the people being attacked. So yes, it's absolutely a threat, and states using it with their resources is much, much worse than regular companies, I imagine, because they have vast resources and they use taxpayers' money for that purpose. So it is a threat, and I fully agree with you that people need to be aware of these threats. And civil society needs to act, international community organizations need to act, and but of course it all starts from awareness, and journalists need to be the first to understand it, because that's how they can communicate it to the public. Otherwise, if journalists don't do their job, no one will. Even civil society organizations have limits. So very valid point. Thank you for that. The third question, what to do? Okay, so I would like Maya to get you to release a bit of your stress. What I'm saying is that artificial intelligence is not a replacement, and it is an augmentation. By augmented means that it is in addition to what you know, in addition to what you have. So use it to facilitate, speed up processes, similar to the way we use word processes instead of papers and pens. And we also use grammar and spelling checks, not because we don't know, but because it makes us faster and more effective and more efficient. And the thing is that there are studies showing that new disruptive technologies, yes, end certain jobs, but they also create many new jobs, new opportunities. Journalists may not necessarily be the same as they are today. They may have totally different ways of looking at life, of things, of society, accessing data differently, analyzing data differently. Even maybe the name, a notion can be different. But totally removing the phrase journalism, I don't think it's possible. Journalists will still act, but they have to find ways in improving their work and making it more efficient and leveraging these technologies instead of just saying it's none of my business and I will not deal with it. Just adding to your power, adding as an additional assistance tools. And of course, I think here is where we have the question about the use of theoretical frameworks. I guess AI would fall under disruptive technologies. It's still a disruptive technology. So one of the more interesting theories is the diffusion of innovation by Rogers, because it helps us see where technology would come to a point where it becomes mainstream. And this applies to the use of generative AI in particular. Have we actually reached the stage where it's become part and parcel of everyday work or not? That's an area of use of this tool. Within journalism studies, I still see this as more of a technological determinism aspect, because we have the notion that if you don't use technology, you will be left behind. Technology is there for the betterment of society. There's also, the technological pessimists that see this as detrimental to society. So these two, as a scientist, I would say there's no right or wrong answer to anything. Always use the arguments, look into their arguments, see what works, and look into the counter-argument. And I would adapt this to journalism. What is it in journalism that would be supported, would these technologies support? What aspects, analysis, how can we fact-check vast amounts of data in very short time? Reference back to the sources. Use new technologies in addition to AI, for example, to look into provenance. Because AI, as we are speaking now, is such a massive area of technologies. It's not just one single technology. So which of these can be categorized as helpful for journalists? So yes, we can leverage these technologies and look into internet governance as one area where I've studied in my past life. And it is an illustration of the connection between economies and technologies. Internet governance argues that the internet has gone through a phase of consolidation. The internet, when it started, was not centralized as it is today. So there's been a process of consolidation with companies gaining more and more power, merging into bigger entities, and leading to internets within the internet, like Facebook becoming its own cyberspace. In some countries, all you have is Facebook. So that's where your internet is. And so this phenomenon of internet consolidation with internet governance can apply to chat bots as well. If your universe is chat GPT, then it affects your whole worldview. Everything that you get through it will end up being used by you in some capacity or the other. So to begin to change your perceptions, your views, and that might actually lead you to become more and more biased, even unknowingly, because of the data that you collect from one single source. So all of these are issues that I think are worth studying in that respect. And as for the worry around, there was a question about the worry about technology, the business people behind these solutions rather than the technology itself. I agree. It's what was that question? I think yes, the business people are after profit, and shareholders constantly ask, where is our share of the profits in this new domain? So they're rarely going to ask about first ethics or first human interests and so forth. And so that's why governments, international organizations, civil society, including journalists themselves, need to stand firm in protecting the rights of citizens. And if that equation or balance is broken, then of course it's a disaster for all of us. And I think we've not done a good job as journalists in the early stages of internet consolidation. We haven't pointed out this growing power in these bigger companies. And governments also lack both the legal as well as the technological understanding of many of these solutions. So they end up falling behind, and they play catch up. And sometimes governments themselves are in bed with these technology companies, and that is due to corruption and lobbyists, and this ends up distorting the whole democratic process in many Western societies. This has been the case, unfortunately, and that's why there's been constant calls by civil society to bring those companies to account. Otherwise, it will actually end up in a similar situation where AI companies will end up getting the biggest share of the profits globally, and that would make them even bigger. And it will be even a major crisis if internet companies themselves become AI conglomerates. And so these will merge into bigger and bigger institutions, and that would lead even to more abuse. Because as the saying goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so with these companies growing so rapidly, but how to do it, that's another question. Because we as journalists and civil society are limited in our capacity. So the consciousness is in governments and decision makers needs to be there to take it to the next step. So I hope they listen, if they are listening. So I have a couple of your questions around AI, and emotions, understanding. And that's a very central question to the notion of what is consciousness and what are emotions and what is self-awareness. And that's been a major debate because this question has been raised more than once by Google engineers. One Google engineer who left claiming that there are signs of this starting to evolve in AI. I think it's not yet there. But the notion of emotions itself is very, very difficult to explain, to describe. And self-awareness and consciousness, all of these concepts are in somewhat of a metaphysical nature that not many of us can grasp. So it will be very difficult to say whether or if at all AI can reach the stage of emotions and consciousness. That's maybe a topic for a bigger conference on this topic. And then the question about, yes, you say that many of the technologies were communication driven, But I think that AI is also communication driven because if you think of it, AI emerged from large language models. And language is the only way for us to communicate, I mean, the best way for us to communicate. So think of it as information is power, and information can come in different forms and different mechanisms. And AI is manifestation of how information is conveyed and delivered and hashed through language. And language can also be in the form of images, it can be in the form of decisions, and can be in forms of logic and steps. All you need is, after you take the decision, is to convert it to action, which is by movement, etc. And that's what is the next stage. Yes.
We have 2 more minutes, and we have now 3 questions, 2 here and 1 on the Zoom. So let's start with the question on the Zoom. Please
Yes,
keep it as a question and
Can you hear
very
me?
brief. Yes, we hear you.
Thank you, Professor, for the very interesting and indeed slightly panicking talk. I have a question regarding the conservative aspect of AI. So often AI is presented, like you were saying, also as a tool of progress. But we know that it doesn't come up with new ideas, and it doesn't come up with new concepts that will shake society, right? It is seen as progress, yes, but we cannot really expect from it societal progress. Rather, we can expect conservatism as it's building on an existing ideas rather than bringing new ideas. So now that we are facing like a huge wave of conservatism in, for example, in Europe, but also in the US, aren't you afraid that it might be a tool that will participate of reinforcing some conservative ideas and be one more, element that we never thought about that will, actually have an impact and potentially a negative impact on the life of many citizens?
Hi. First of all, I just want to join the others in thanking you so much for a really informative and thought-provoking lecture. I'm now really excited to also get into the workshop and delve into these things. But my question is about the framing of the talk in the broadest sense in terms of like general intelligence. Because I saw an argument, I can't remember where I saw it, but the argument was basically that general intelligence is an oxymoron, that intelligence is domain-specific, like as far as human being intelligence goes. So I could be an incredible chess player, but I get lost walking 1 block down the street. Or I could be incredible at reading the emotions of other people in the room, but I can't multiply 2 numbers together. The point being that general intelligence isn't really a real concept. So my question is maybe, A, do you buy that? Do you kind of buy the idea that general intelligence might be a sort of red herring? And relatedly, if we want to think in terms of different concepts than general intelligence, are there any specific benchmarks and AI capabilities on the horizon of maybe the next couple of decades that you see as being really important, like checkpoints that may or may not be reached, that you think would be important to think about as like, oh, this would mean that AI is progressing at like a scary pace versus it's not. And for example, like if you go back 3 decades, people might say like an AI becoming the Go champion as it did. Are there any examples of such checkpoints in the future, the next 30 years, that you kind of have in mind as being important ones to look out for?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Walid. As everyone else said already, it was a wonderful lecture. What actually fears me is, and maybe you can try and give me the answer, what will happen with ordinary people in underdeveloped societies, where we have a lot of societies and places where people are still struggling to have access to internet, and you have NGOs and organizations that try to develop media literacy, digital literacy, and now we are in a period where we have to think about AI skills and AI literacy. So what fears me is actually that these technological advancements are happening too fast that we don't have time to develop all the skills to benefit from AI technology. And I don't see how to fight this and how to catch everything. Thank you.
Thank you for the lecture. It was very interesting on this side. I wanted to ask about the relationship of AI in terms of areas of journalism that are not necessarily directly related with writing and creating content. In particularly, what is the role that AI could have in for instance, in fact-checking or in identifying even fake information or hoaxes or various forms of disinformation that are also created with the AI. This particularly since, the use of AI in reporting is not necessarily that new. I remember at least 5 to 7 years ago, there were already some reporting, especially on financial results, being done in order to process, for instance, all the data that comes out of the financial reports of large companies.
Thank you for the questions. I'd like to go through them in chronological order. Yes, societal progress, the conservative ideas. I mean, this is Ellis's question around AI being abused by society, and that's similar to any new technology that is possible to be used for good or for evil. But I agree with you that the more bias, the more concentration of certain types of data being used for training, the more likely that the AI will be pointing in that direction. And we had many examples, a few here, but if you look into the AI being biased, examples from Google, you'll find so many. And that might actually be a reason why the context of competition between different entities that are working on AI is important, because they bring in data that is more diverse and not concentrated in one direction. I can give you an example. I was in Mauritania a few weeks back, and there was a workshop on the use of AI. And every time we write, okay, give us a picture of a Mauritanian, they would give a picture with someone looking like a Moroccan. And then we looked into it and realized, because there's not much data about Mauritanian customs in the data set. And so while Morocco is a much bigger country and much bigger data set from traditions and lifestyle and that. So the more there is data, the training data providing some sort of balance, giving an opportunity to those voices that have not been heard. The more of that data exists, the more likely there will be a better chance for them to be represented. But as I mentioned, any tool can be used for good or for bad, so there's really no solution for this to have an ultimate fair AI. It's people that are going to be the weakest link. And so the other question around artificial general intelligence, the notion that's been meaning that how can we define general intelligence when we have humans themselves being? So it's not about what a human can do, but what a human is capable of doing. So we take any capabilities that humans have done, for example, reading, writing, walking, etc. So we find all the capabilities and list them. If any single person can do it, then AI should be able to do it. That's the idea of AGI, not taking a particular individual, but by aggregate anyone around the world who is a human who can do this, then AI needs to do it as good as that person. And that would mean beating the best chess player, running the fastest, doing everything that the best human can do within that realm. And so that would actually explain why the super AI is more likely than it is a general AI. That's because if it does it better than the best human, then it will probably be better than many humans. And so the underdeveloped society's skills, that's a very critical question, because we know that there are a lot of people around the world that have lack of access to basic resources, including internet access. Not only that, even water and basic amenities. So it's an unfair world that we live in, and much of it is due to many reasons, such as lack of opportunity, lack of resources, poor governance, sometimes concentration of power and corruption, etc. If I were, say, somewhat of a higher position, I can explain to you what methods can be done or what approaches can be done. But at least what can be achieved in societies where you have access to then is to build the resources through training, through education. That's where you start. If you can't have enough resources, then that's unfortunate, but that's the way the world runs today. And I fear that this is only going to give more advantage to developed countries over developing countries. As for AI is in fact-checking, I know that the robotic journalism has been with us for a long time, and the notion that data is possible to be used by any algorithm, that's been the case. But what is interesting today is the generative aspect of AI, and where you develop things almost from scratch. Of course, you have the training data, but with a very simple prompt, you actually have a full story. That's something that's never happened before. And so while robotic journalism is still going to be with us, and I teach a data journalism course, so it's part and parcel of what we work with. But the aspect of fact-checking by AI is basically one of these subsets of AI tools where they look into the context of the statement and then identify knowledge from the knowledge base, whether it conflicts or contradicts with that information. And so it breaks down this text, and that's what you'll see in the workshop, breaks down the text and converts the text to claims. And so when you have a claim, then it looks into the claim. Does it, for example, it will say that the global population is 20 billion, and then it will say, no, that's incorrect. So it will fact check that because it has information that's lower than that. And so this is basically what it does. It's not, let's say, hard to grasp how it works. But the difficulty here is to fact-check information that is context-based. And if data is not there, it will never be possible to do it. So whenever you use a fact-checking device or app, you have to augment and complement it with sufficiently reliable data that it will use to compare. That's how it will work. But I encourage you to come to the workshop and see for yourselves. Okay.
Please join me in thanking Dr. Walid Al-Saqaf for our excellent talk.